Okay, and we are live.
Oh, cool. Hi.
All right, guys. All right. And we are also being recorded. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Lynn McTaggart. I am so thrilled today to have two great chums and amazing healers in Dr. Eric Pearl and Gillian Fleer. Now, they are the heads of the Reconnection, and Dr. Pearl had an extraordinary experience many years ago as a chiropractor when he started healing his patients without touching them and had more and more astonishing experiences. And more recently, he and Gillian have brought the Reconnection, which is what he's been teaching, how to use these new frequencies he discovered to heal yourself and heal each other. And now with Gillian, they are now bringing it out in a much wider method. They are bringing healing to the world. So that's one of the great things we share. We have very different paths to healing, of course, me with intention, you with reconnection. But we heal the idea of heal others, heal yourself. But I want to start with something really more basic, which is, tell me about how you define healing. Let's start with the basics.
That's a good idea. Let's start with the basics. By the way, I do want to say it's very nice to see you again. Haven't seen you since lunch a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it was really nice to see you and Brian and the beautiful children and grandchildren. So it's cool to share this time together. But yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of different ways we can view this. And this is part of what I have discovered. And you'll see in some of the distinction between the way the first book, The Reconnection, was written and our new book, The Direct Path to Healing, has been written, because I had always, up to that point of the Reconnection, viewed healing the way most of us do, as relieving symptoms and other problems and situations. And healing is something that you would send or receive. And people reading what we've written now and the way we're teaching in our training programs all around the world say, oh, has reconnective healing changed? And no, it hasn't changed. Truth is truth is truth. What changes is the human understanding and perspective, and therefore ability to communicate that truth of that which is. And so much more what we find is that healing is not something that happens. Healing is. You are already the healing. We're already the healing that we're looking for. So it's not something that's sent. It's not something that changes. It's not that we become enlightened. We are enlightenment. But what happens is the healing that we are becomes revealed to us. Our truth, our essence becomes revealed to us as us. And in that, suddenly we become the demonstration of the truth of who we have always been.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with that whole idea, because one of the problems we have is a very diminished view of who we are. Yeah. We as human beings, I mean, we are given a very diminished scientific story. You know, Joan Didion wrote the words, we write stories to tell us how to live. You know, we need stories to tell us how to live. And one of the biggest stories of all is our scientific story. And the story we have been handed, which is more than 300 years old, is a story, a very sad story of separate things operating according to fixed laws in time and space. And that we as humans are essentially a collection of chemistry and electrical signaling. But what you have discovered and what I've discovered too is that we are so much more than that. We have innate capacities to heal ourselves, each other, and the world. We have extraordinary capacities we have not tapped into. And so when you talk about we are healing, we have that ability, and we just need to learn how to access it, it.
I am so grateful for exactly how you both, but also how you frame that scientifically, Lynn, because in some ways, one of the key points for today was to address giving yourself permission to heal. And I was really thinking about that idea and thinking on two levels: from the introspection understanding, the reality of my being. I am the healing. There's no separation between healing and healing itself and healing another. We are one. We share our being with everything and everyone. And yet there is a reasoning to that in that localization of the body-mind. And so consciousness is. We are simply one consciousness. And we're more and more, thank goodness for you and many of the colleagues that surround you scientifically, this is really becoming an extremely important inquiry. And Nassim Harameyn's most recent paper hopefully will be released soon. And there will be very practical ways for us to really know this as the knowing, absolute knowing. Howsoever, the experience of healing in the body-mind often requires some reasoning. And reasoning is often found in thoughts and feelings and behaviors and beliefs. And as you so beautifully examine this healing, when we are able to heal others, there is an innate reconnecting with the whole. And so that examination of giving us permission to heal, I think, is such an important topic, because we can get very lost in just what you brought about at the beginning, the story. Even Einstein got lost in a story. He lost himself in a way. He came so close, really, to what the revealing of no time, no space was, but couldn't complete it. There was just that idea of separation, otherness. And so the reconnective healing experience has never been particularly focused on the body-mind experience, although the consequence of the reconnective healing experience reveals immense body-mind healing. We kind of share the idea that we start at the conclusion and we never leave there. What is it that rests in the background, that is ever present, that is, as we're kind of exploring here, the healing itself, the capacity, your exploration of the field. The field is living in us. We are not living in the field. The field is who we are. So it's just another opportunity. And I think it's a beautiful collaboration.
There's different understandings of the way things appeared. To me, it always appeared that there was a field and we were in it, that there was healing and it needs to come, that there is someone who needs a healing and it needs to be sent. And all of that created and reinforced the illusion of distance, space, and time. And yet the recognition that we are this allows the illusions of time, distance, and space to simply melt away, to vanish, just like the concept of resisting health challenges or pains or other things allows itself to melt into place when we, instead of resist it, when we embrace it and bring it into our hearts. Love dissolves everything.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely true. And this is the mistake so many people make. I hear this all the time. How do I get into the field? How do I enter the field? And I always say, you're already in there, honey. You are the field. You are.
And honey is the key word.
You are the field. And this is the point. We and our subatomic particles, that nethermost element of our beings, are doing a little subatomic energy dance all the time with other subatomic particles in the world. That's what everything in the world is comprised of. And this little subatomic dance creates the field. So we're always there. We're living in there. The problem is, and you said it too, the problem is we don't experience life as being connected. We don't experience life as being all one. We experience life as
recognize it as that.
Well, that's the problem with the story, and it's the problem with the way we have created our society based on that faulty story. So everything we have created in our lives is based on competitive individualism. You know,
yes,
me first, only me. I have to get there first. There ain't enough to go around, so life has to proceed through struggle. Darwinian views that still essentially control us. So because of that, we experience life as, you know, a lonely person on a lonely planet in a lonely universe. We experience life as separation. One thing that I have discovered in my work that's been extraordinary through the neuroscience brainwave studies we've done on Power of 8 groups, we've found that the parts of the brain that make us feel separate, that reinforce that faulty view, like the parietal lobes, they sit back here, they tell us what's me and what's not me. And also part of the right frontal lobes that make us feel worried, have worried, doubt, negativity. All of this is turned way down. Completely unlike meditation, completely unlike meditation. That was our big surprise. It's much more like a Buddhist monk during ecstatic prayer.
Yeah.
And what people report is a feeling of oneness. And for me, the big secret sauce for healing is returning to a sense and a state of oneness.
So I would suggest that and that it's so beautiful the way that you've framed really this work that you're sharing all over the world, because in a way you're raising the I think the epic question. We perceive and conceive a sense of separation. We know it's an illusion. Scientifically, we know it's an illusion. It's almost mainstream. I mean, my goodness, Eckhart Tolle has been around for a very long time now. Speaking into this is not a surprise. So the question is, why, if we know that in a way, perceiving and conceiving the world out here is an illusion in a way, it's almost like a little VR headset that we get to interact with. And even in sort of current technology, this is something we're doing all the time. If we are aware somewhere that the truth of what we are perceiving and conceiving is not actual, then who are we? And that pausing of absolute presence that happens in an intention experiment, and in your groups, or in the way that reconnective healing has always sort of revealed, again, it's always revealed the presence of no space, no time, or that experience that really is prior to any experience or all experience. And that's what we call energy, light, and information. But energy, light, and information, as Erica's always said, is, and we know this, you can call it God. I call it God, love, infinite intelligence, source. You can call it frequencies. It doesn't really matter, because at this moment, we are in the recognition that it is who we are. So I think it's our recognition, Lynn. If we start at the conclusion and we never leave there, we never think to harm another person. We are in the recognition that we are one touching, one consciousness. So if our decisions, if our opinions, if our lives, if our experiences are formed from that conclusion, what does the world look like? And I think that's, in a way, what you're exploring in your groups. And it's certainly what the reconnective healing experience is endlessly revealing. Does it have a point of transformation in terms of when do we see that as the world, and when does it sort of catch up, if you will?
When do we recognize it? And you know, if there's actually no reconnection, because there's no such thing as a disconnection except for the obscuring of our ability to see that we are all one. So there's actually no such thing as a connection, because to connect, there must be two or more coming together. And if everyone and everything truly is one, then here we are. And as one, you can't really send anything to yourself unless you go to the UPS office or something. So if we say to everyone, I mean, and anyone who's comfortable and in a good place to do this right now, who's watching this and listening, we just say, stand up for a moment, just stand up. So just stand up if you want for a second, everyone. And what I want you to do once you're standing is take a step toward yourself. Now you're probably just looking around the room going, what the hell does he mean by that? Because you can't take a step toward yourself. You already are yourself. So healing really, if we allow ourselves to recognize that we are all one, can't be sent, because the concept of sending creates distance, time, space, illusions, separation, which creates the fears and the feelings that we need to protect ourselves and all those things. When we allow ourselves to understand that we are one, then as a healing facilitator, you receive healing, you just receive, and being one, then everyone receives. And this is really key. This is part of why we speak about our book as the direct path to healing, because the direct path means there really is no path. So when Jillian said we begin at the conclusion, our receiving this is my healing, is your healing, is our neighbor's healing, are the people's that we love's healing, and the people that we sort of like, and the people that we don't like at all. Everyone receives.
I think that's a really interesting point and an important point, an essential point. I think it's okay to call it reconnection for this reason. People need to be reminded of who they really are, because we've been sold that story for so long. Our whole generation and generations before have been brought up with this whole idea of separation, competitive individualism. So we don't experience life as connected. We don't experience life as a connection and as no need for a connection, as you put it, because we experience life as separation. So all you're doing is tuning people in, essentially, by saying it's a reconnection. It's a reconnection to what is, essentially. And
it's
for me,
made by words to communicate just what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what I've discovered in my Power of Eight groups and on many of the courses that I do where I'm putting people into groups, that one of the key factors in healing somebody themselves is getting off of themselves. That is probably one of the biggest things that I teach. Is there have been so many people who are stuck. And one of the beauties of a group and small group healing is that you send intention to somebody else. You send healing to somebody else. You get off of yourself. And I have countless people who were stuck with something. And I don't just mean healing the body, but healing their finances or their career or their relationship or their life purpose. In this case, with Andy Spiros, it was healing a divorce, a messy divorce, and also getting a new job. And she was going nowhere in her group. We were doing all kinds of things. It was not happening for her. All the intention of the world was not working. So I finally exasperatedly said, Andy, get off of yourself. Start intending for someone else. Start doing group work on someone else who needs it more. Somebody who had big financial problems in their group, called Diane. And I also had her focus on a young boy called Luke, who had tried to commit suicide after breaking up with his first serious girlfriend. So he threw himself onto off of a 40-foot structure onto hard ground and broke every bone in his body, had brain damage, nerve damage, etc. So all of our groups started doing, my suggestion after hearing about this from his father-in-law, from his stepfather, I started asking all of the groups to do intentions on successive Sundays for Luke. And while his stepfather kept a running commentary of what was going on, and things were happening that were coinciding with the time we were doing the intention, Luke got out of the hospital record time, healed everything, is a normal, healthy 19-year-old now. But, which is wonderful. Maybe it was good doctoring, maybe it was us. But what was really interesting is what happened to Andy, because as soon as she got off of herself, she gets a call out of nowhere offering her her dream job. Didn't even know the person. And her divorce starts proceeding so smoothly and so beautifully that the lawyers on both sides asked her and her ex-husband, could we have a blueprint of what you just did? Because we'd like to use it with all of our clients. So her life totally fell into place by getting off of herself. And so what I love so much about your work too is that tagline you've used for years, heal others, heal yourself. It always seemed to put others first. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do, but actually, I'm going to suggest first that there's a story that your story reminds me of that I think Jillian shares best about two sisters who came in to see us who weren't even focused on trying to heal the other one.
We should let's save that to the end because it's really a fun story of pregnancy. But I wanted to just touch on what you're asking, Lynn, because I think it's very interesting. One of your other points was overcoming your major obstacles to healing. And you've kind of described the simplicity of the largest obstacle. And you've kind of framed it in getting off yourself. But let's investigate that just a little bit, because as a concept, getting off yourself is it's a beautiful tool and it's an approach. And sometimes it can be really challenging to do depending on how extreme the situation may seem or feel. So lots of distractions in this particular way. There's a way to bring this about in your groups. But what is really conspiring here? And in the reconnective healing experience, often what I observe is there is a renewed enthusiasm that happens as this dissolving of otherness without a particular set of tools emerges. It is something that just starts to reveal itself. And what does that mean? When we are ambitious about something, let's just take music, art, doesn't matter. When we are creating on behalf of the awareness that we are one, from the awareness of unity, from just the simplicity of I am, okay? There is something that experience conspires around to support and elevate that. When we are creating on behalf of one individual, the ego, when we are of the belief that we just need more money, a better house, a better relationship, a nicer environment, whatever it may be, we ultimately really are just in a way creating another state of separation without even being aware of it. And so in some ways, getting enthusiastic, becoming ambitious and inspired in whatever we are here, we'll call it our purpose to do. In this way, it's healing. Healing when our practitioners or people who are just exploring the reconnective healing experience become ambitious and excited about this awareness. Same in your groups that you're describing. They glimpse oneness. They glimpse the truth of who they are. They glimpse their reality. Then they start to, again, create as a purpose things that are inspired from there, not from, I want to get rid of this. I really want to change that. I failed at that. I didn't get into the college I wanted. I'm never going to be who my parents think I should be. I'm riddled with cancer and nothing in my life is ever going to happen. It's almost as if their relationship to whatever the experience may be that they're having completely shifts, as it probably did with your client. Her ambition, she was inspired by helping, I'm sorry, the gentleman that she was intending for? Luke. So in that, all of her truth, that she really is, became the essence of her thoughts, her feelings. So in one way, that can happen through, again, intention in the mind. In this case, there's a bypassing of the mind. It's a very direct way in which energy, light, and information sort of just dissolves that sense of I'm a person. We lose often for a moment even that drive to present as this individual self. It just and it glimpses. It's the mind comes back quickly. Of course it does. So anyway, in this, I would just say the characterization of these obstacles softens. There's an unclenching of the fist in a way.
And you know, listening to the two of you speak, it's very funny. Just when you think you know where you are, you find out you're somewhere else. In perspective, brought me way back to when I was still practicing chiropractic, which is leading to exactly what we're talking about. Was I was making the physical chiropractic adjustments, and they were wonderful. And one day I had heard something and it kept playing in my mind. Reconnect humanity, the physical, with humanity, the spiritual. And I remember touching a chiropractic patient and deciding, before I make that adjustment, I'm just going to allow myself to become one with them, with the heavens, with whatever words we want to use, and almost breathe, almost sort of move with them, and then make the very same adjustment. And healing started happening at a different levels, not the dramatic reconnective healings yet, but a different level of healing for the patients. And then in doing that fairly consistently for about 3 years, one day, the reconnective healings started coming out, which everyone knows the story, so we don't have to lead into that. But in that, I was so in awe of what I was seeing that I forgot to think about the reuniting the physical, humanity, the physical, with humanity, the spiritual. I forgot to think about it. And yet the healings became larger and larger, because the glimpse of it, the glimpse of the infinite being that we are, instead of the illusion of the finite beings that we are, remained the enlightenment that we always are. You know, people are, asking Ramana Maharshi and others, when will I become enlightened? And the answer is when we stop asking when, because it's saying that we're not. It disappeared, that thought of I have to remember, I have to maintain this consciousness, and the healings expanded because the light, the knowingness that is us, is always us. And therefore, this is the key to healing. People would say, well, how can you come in and so powerfully do these healings? What are you doing that I'm not doing? Nothing. It's the knowingness. And as each of us grant ourselves permission to be that knowingness that we are, we suddenly realize there's no longer a hierarchy in the field of healing. There's no, this healer is better than that healer, and this one in Tibet or over there, we need to go visit. It becomes the recognition that it is us in the infinite.
Absolutely. And I just want to let you know about one thing, which is, even with Power of 8 intention, we use the word intention, but actually what's going on here is love. There's nothing mental about it. It starts with a thought of what to essentially direct that unit, that little piece of oneness, into a particular place. But it happens in the heart, but also it happens in the connection, in the group. I mean, one of the really interesting things that I looked at when I was trying to figure out why Power of 8 works, and I should tell everybody who doesn't know, I really was trying not to do this, actually, because as Eric remembers me back when we met around 2004, I was simply an author writing about the new science and had no intention whatsoever of doing healing. And I got very hijacked when I was playing around with big intention experiments, trying to see how far to take intention, because I was really fascinated by scientific studies looking at thoughts affecting things outside yourself and thoughts in a group. And there was a little bit of tantalizing evidence about that, but a lot of evidence among these frontier scientists that thoughts are things that affect other things. So I wanted to, being a hard-nosed journalist at my heart that I am, I wanted to see how far we can take this. You know, are we talking about curing cancer with our thoughts? Are we talking about a tiny shift in a quantum particle? So that's why I set up the intention experiments. But we were playing around with them and getting some really, really good results. We've done 40 by now, more than 40. We just did 41, and 36 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects, working with a batch of different scientists in different universities. So back in 2008, I was really interested how, can we shrink this down a little? So I thought, well, maybe we'll create these little mini intention experiments in my next workshop. So that's what we did, and I expected it to be a nice little mild effect. And we got all of these major healings, which was shocking and upsetting, actually, to me, because I kept thinking, this is not my work. I'm doing the intention experiments. I'm working with scientists. I don't want to do this. But I kept practicing with it over 10 years before I published the book about it, because I kept trying to figure out, why does this work? Why am I seeing I've had 2 people get out of their wheelchairs. I've had all kinds of people, cancer surgery, reverse cancer, do all kinds of stuff. And what I came to when I was trying to study all of this, aside from the neuroscience studies we did, was altruism. As I talked about, getting off of yourself. When you look at the science of altruism, it's like a bulletproof vest. People who do things for other people live longer, healthier, happier lives. Volunteers live longer, healthier, happier lives. People with an illness helping other people are much more likely to get better. People who focus obsessively on the self are more likely to get worse, and on and on and on it goes. So I think what really happens is a connection, at least in my work, a connection with oneness that people don't experience ordinarily. And they also experience in getting off of themselves and being part of and submerged by this sense of oneness. They experience love. And that is the big secret sauce, that and oneness, because with the Power of 8 groups and in my courses, in my masterclass, we're just opening the doors to that in next week. I run a year-long course, and I put people in groups, and I teach them a lot of stuff, but then they work with the groups every week for a whole year. So there was a guy called Jerry, and he illustrates it perfectly. Jerry, this is during lockdown. He joins my masterclass for 2020. And he tells me toward the end of it, I've experienced the best time in my life during COVID and lockdown. It's my sense of community. I have felt closer to people than I ever have in my life. I've had more sense of connection and love than I've ever experienced. So he takes the next course just to experience it again. Takes 20 to 21 for a whole year. He does it again, has a second Power of 8 group, and says at the end of it, I now know what love is. And so, it's what we're talking about, maybe doing slightly different language and certainly different pathways to it. But we're talking about healing really being about lack of separation and therefore feeling of love, in my view.
So, yeah, and absolutely, which here's what comes to me when I'm listening to the beautiful way you're expressing this. Healing is love. Therefore, love, healing, pick your word, is the dissolving of separation, is the dissolving of otherness, is the, as Rupert Spira would say, a taste of our shared being. And you can't technique your way into love. You can't technique your way into healing. And ultimately, as gorgeous as books telling us about how to find a love relationship and books telling us the steps to healing and everything are, the ultimate design of technique in this realm of love and healing is to self-dissolve.
Mm.
The love and the healing allows all of the technique to self-dissolve. The only thing that ultimately wants to hold on to those techniques is the ego that's in fear of what if I don't have a crutch to hold on to. And yet what allows us to get there is that inner knowingness, that once that crutch is gone, we discover that we never needed it in the first place. That's healing. That's love.
Yeah. And I think we're both really expressing